In the 21st century, successful use of technology for teaching and learning demands major changes in teaching and organizational culture. As technology changes, the management organization of universities will have to change too, which will have a tremendous effect on distance education. The following seminar, conducted by Dr. Tony Bates, gives a definition of e-learning and discusses the implications for universities.
What is e-learning? Well, I have a pretty broad definition of e-learning. All computer and internet-based activities that support teaching and learning, and that includes on-campus students as well as distance students. So any way of using a computer that can support teaching and learning. And in fact, what we have is a spectrum or a continuum of e-learning. At one end, we have face-to-face teaching with no e-learning, but even face-to-face teaching basically has a technological base. The technological base of face-to-face teaching is the classroom. And in fact, we have massive campuses built, which is basically the technology supporting face-to-face teaching, but it's not electronic technology, it's bricks and mortar. By far the biggest use of technology for teaching around the world in post-secondary education is as a classroom aid. What I'm using at the moment, PowerPoint presentation, is a classroom aid. You get better handwriting, you can see it more clearly than 10 years ago, because I would have come 10 years ago with those horrible transparencies, smudgy ink and so on, but I wouldn't have changed anything in terms of this is a lecture. And if Rip Van Winkle woke up after 800 years and walked into this room, he knew exactly what it was, even though the technology may have changed. We haven't changed the teaching situation. Yet 80% of all use of technology around the world is basically to support classroom aids like this. WebCT, which is one of the main platforms, did a survey, and that's where I got the figure from. They found out that 80% of WebCT use, which is an online use, is to support classroom teaching. And then we have a number of institutions that have introduced laptop programs. I'm working with one at the moment, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. In 3 of their programs, Business, Information Technology and Energy, students have to bring a laptop to the classroom. But the way that laptop's used, again, does not change the classroom situation. Now, the difference here is that in classroom aids, students don't need to have a computer and can still get through the exams because the WebCT is supplementary, it's not essential. In laptop programs, though, they have to have the laptop because they have to use it in the classroom. But what they use it for is often traditional teaching methods. Then there's a very interesting mode of e-learning, which is hardly used at all, but I think it will be the driver of campus-based use of technology. And I call this mixed mode, where you don't eliminate face-to-face teaching, but you reduce it, and the rest of the time the student spends online. So a typical situation might be, instead of having 3 lectures a week, you would have 1 classroom time a week, and the rest of the time the students are working online. And I'll come to the reason why I think this will eventually be the dominant mode, although it's not at the moment. And lastly, you have fully online distance education, where students don't come to the campus at all. So you have a spectrum of e-learning. For one end, no e-learning at all, and at the end, fully e-learning. And when people talk about e-learning, I often ask, well, what kind? And incidentally, this is probably the most difficult decision a program or department has to make, is where on this spectrum does it want to be in its teaching? And the decision will be driven by 2 factors. One is the nature of the subject matter, because some subject matter doesn't lend itself very easily to fully online. For instance, at Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, they teach welders, people who do welding. Well, the argument there is we can do some of welding, fault finding, online, but we actually can't teach the welding. They've got to have the equipment in their hands in order to learn the skills. Whereas other programs can put everything online without any loss in terms of the knowledge and experience. In fact, it can be better taught online than in a face-to-face environment. So the nature of the subject matter is one thing that will determine this, and the other is the target group, what kinds of students you're trying to get at. And this comes back to my point about lifelong learners, people who've already been through university, already been on campus, already got a degree, but want to update or improve their knowledge in a particular field or move into another field, distance education and online learning is perfect for them. But an 18-year-old coming out of high school who's not used to independent learning, doesn't really know what subjects they want, comes to university because they want the social companionship of other young people, you've got to introduce e-learning gradually to them. You can't just throw them into it. So the target group is as important as the topic. And we get other terms like blended learning, which is a mix of face-to-face and online. And again, it can cover at least 3 different modes. And then another term sometimes used is distributed learning, which can be both mixed mode or distance education. Why are people moving to e-learning? Well, e-learning supports the skills needed in knowledge-based societies. For instance, one skill that people need now is to be able to find, organize, analyze, and apply information appropriately in their work. It's a skill you can learn by using the computer as part of your studies. You can actually teach the subject matter. In fact, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology now is saying that every student who graduates, will be computer literate in their own subject area. Whether they're a welder or a business person or somebody running an oil field, they will know how to use computers as part of their work. And they'll be computer literate, not just knowing how to do word processing and so on, but for instance, if they're a welder, will know how to do fault finding using a computer in a pipeline. Using technology for learning prepares students for knowledge-based work because you're replicating often in the classroom or even at the home where the student may be working, or in the cafeteria or wherever, the kind of work environment that many of the students will find themselves in a knowledge-based society. And as I said, it's particularly good for lifelong learners. It really suits a lifelong learner. If you've got a full-time job and a family, and you can work whenever you can find the time in the evenings at home, then you keep your family life and you also can study at the same time. If you have to continually commute into the college in the evenings, you're very tired and you're not working at the time you want to be working and you're away from the family. And this then leads to the issue of quality teaching and learning. Where e-learning has been used successfully, it's been driven by trying to achieve certain kinds of outcomes, certain kinds of learning outcomes related to a knowledge-based economy or society. For instance, information management, managing information, critical thinking skills, not just moving the information around, but thinking about that information and how it can be used in whatever work you're doing. Problem-based learning, very successfully used in problem-based learning. The University of British Columbia has moved all its medical program, its doctor's program, MD program, away from what it called information-based to problem-based.